Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, and we'll be learning today. In Yirtzeh Hashem, we'll be completing Ayin Beis Amid Beis and doing at least part of Ayin Gimel Amid Aleph. We're in the middle of a very complex topic over here, which is a little bit of a strange topic to us, and that is the topic of wearing tefillin in the Beis HaKisei. Again, the backdrop of this whole shaila is back in the day when people wore tefillin all day. It was very possible that somebody would have the need to take care of his bodily functions while he's wearing tefillin. Also, Beis HaKisei was typically located just out in the open in the Sadeh. What's a person supposed to do with his tefillin? He has to go use the Beis HaKisei. What does he do with his tefillin? So, to recap quickly over here, we're going to begin today on Ayin Beis Amid Beis with Siman Mem Gimel Sif Beis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines off the bottom on Ayin Beis Amid Beis. But what we learned so far, since the beginning of Siman Mem Gimel, we learned that there's such a thing as a Beis HaKisei Kavua and a Beis HaKisei Arai. What's a Beis HaKisei Kavua? A Beis HaKisei Kavua is a Beis HaKisei, an area in the Sadeh that was used as a Beis HaKisei, typically not only for Ketanim, not only for Meraglayim, for urination, but also for Gedolim, for defecation. Now, a person is not allowed to go to the Beis HaKisei for Gedolim while he's wearing tefillin, because tefillin requires a guf naki, and certainly that does not meet the requirements of a guf naki. So, in a Beis HaKisei Kavua is a place where people would go for Gedolim. Typically, there is tsaya located over there in the Beis HaKisei Kavua. Also, typically, when somebody would go to a Beis HaKisei Kavua, he would take care of his needs while sitting, because again, a Beis HaKisei Kavua was a place that was typically used for Gedolim as well. Therefore, in a Beis HaKisei Kavua, we have a concern if we allow somebody to go to such a Beis HaKisei while he's wearing his tefillin. We have to be concerned, even if he's only going for urination, he's only going for Ketanim, but once he's in the Beis HaKisei Kavua, he might come to use the Beis HaKisei for Gedolim also, which you're not allowed to do while wearing tefillin. Therefore, the halacha is a person is not allowed to enter a Beis HaKisei Kavua while wearing tefillin because of a gezerah shema yifna behem. We have a gezerah, the words that was the words of the Mechaber, gezerah shema yasa behem tzrachav. We have a gezerah that he might come to use the facilities for Gedolim, which you're not allowed to do while wearing tefillin. So a person is not allowed to enter even, for any reason, even to urinate, which is a tzarich, but even just to go in for nothing. A person is not allowed to enter a Beis HaKisei Kavua while he is wearing tefillin. What would a person have to do if he needs to use the facilities and the only thing that's available to him is a Beis HaKisei Kavua? So the Mechaber said what he has to do is he has to take off the tefillin, he has to wrap the tefillin in a beged, and we're going to see he holds the tefillin in his right hand while the tefillin are wrapped up, and then he could go into the Beis HaKisei Kavua and he could urinate. Then we learned that there's such a thing as a Beis HaKisei Arai. A Beis HaKisei Arai is an area that was not used for Gedolim, it was only used for Ketanim. Generally, a person used the facilities in a Beis HaKisei Arai while standing. Therefore, in a Beis HaKisei Arai, there's no reason to be concerned that somebody might come to go to the Beis HaKisei for Gedolim, because such a Beis HaKisei was not used for Gedolim. Therefore, technically, we can allow a person to go into a Beis HaKisei Arai and even urinate, use the Beis HaKisei for Ketanim while wearing the tefillin, because we don't have any concern of Shema Yasa Tzrachav Behem, that he might come to use the facilities for Gedolim. However, the Beis HaKisei Arai comes with its own problem. The problem of the Beis HaKisei Arai is, since he's going to use the facilities while standing, there's a risk that droplets of urine may land on his feet or on his shoes, and then he may come to use the hand that's holding the tefillin to go wipe up the droplets of urine. That would be a bizoyin for the tefillin. Therefore, at a Beis HaKisei Arai, You're not allowed to use the Beis HaKisei Arai for Ketanim while you're holding the tefillin. But you're allowed to use the Beis HaKisei for Ketanim in a Beis HaKisei Arai while you're wearing the tefillin. Because while you're wearing the tefillin, there's no reason not to. It's not considered antithetical to wearing the tefillin to urinate. Right? It's not the same as Yaset Tzrachav. It's not the same as defecating. Defecating is not a guf naki. Urinating is not considered that you don't have a guf naki. So technically, you could urinate while wearing the tefillin. The only problem is that there's a risk of wiping up nitzaitzaites, wiping up droplets of urine. That's why in the Beis HaKisei Arai, we don't want you to be holding on to the tefillin. Against that backdrop, we go now 5 lines from the bottom of Tzif Beis. First, and I read this in the previous year, the Mechaber just identifies what a Beis HaKisei Kavua is. Says the Mechaber, Beis HaKisei Kavua, what's a Beis HaKisei Kavua? Hainu sheyesh bo tzaya. We're talking about an area that's used for a Beis HaKisei, and there is tzaya, there's excrement located in that area. V'hu al pnei hasada b'lo chafira, and that excrement is on the surface of the ground. It's exposed on the surface of the ground. This is what constitutes a Beis HaKisei Kavua. What's a Beis HaKisei Kavua? It's a place where people generally go and use that area for Gedolim. They defecate over there. So there's tzaya located over there. And the Mechaber makes the point that the tzaya is located al pnei hasadeh. It's on the surface of the ground. Let's take a look here in the Mishnah Berurah. It says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting Yud Gimel. B'loi chafira. The Mechaber said that the excrement is located on the surface. There's no chafira. There's no pit that's dug or a ditch that's dug out where the tzaya is. The tzaya is on the surface. Ritzaynai Loimar, says the Mishnah Berurah, Ritzaynai Loimar, what the Mechaber wants to say over here, when he says bedafka that the tzaya is on the surface, b'loi chafira, is oz tzarech lecholtzan berichuk arba amos. What did we say by a Beis HaKisei Kavua? By a Beis HaKisei Kavua, we said, this person is wearing tefillin, he has the need to urinate, and where he's located is a Beis HaKisei Kavua. We said, no, you're not allowed to go in to that Beis HaKisei Kavua. You can't go into the Beis HaKisei Kavua while you're wearing tefillin because of the Gzeira Shema Yasa Behem Tzrachav. So we're telling him that he cannot go in to this Beis HaKisei Kavua. If he can't go into the Beis HaKisei Kavua, so what does he need to do? Obviously, he needs the Beis HaKisei, so what does he need to do? He needs to take his tefillin off. He needs to remove his tefillin. When is he going to remove his tefillin? So we're going to see later on, well actually not later on, we said at the end of Sif Aleph, so it's 2 lines above the beginning of Sif Beis, in the Mechaber over here, we said if you have the need to use the Beis HaKisei for Ketanim, and we're telling you that you're not allowed to go in, you can't go in because the tefillin are baroisha, you can't go in while you're wearing the tefillin. So what do? You take off the tefillin while you are still 4 amos away from the Beis HaKisei. You take off your tefillin, you wrap them up, you hold them, and then you go into the Beis HaKisei. Says the Mishnah Berurah, when is this true that you have to remove the tefillin when you're 4 amos away from the Beis HaKisei? That's when you're dealing with the Beis HaKisei Kavua, where there is excrement, and the excrement is on the surface of the ground, below chafira. And as the Mishnah Berurah says here, a nice cut in Yud Gimel, Ritzaynai Loimar, oz tzarech lecholtzan berichuk arba amos. When there's tzaya located on the surface of the sadeh, in that Beis HaKisei Kavua, that's when you must remove the tefillin while you're still 4 amos away from the Beis HaKisei. Because since there's tzaya exposed over there, you got to remove your tefillin before you get there. Aval imu b'chafira, but if the tzaya is in a ditch, so the tzaya is not exposed, harei chafiri hi rishus la'atzmai, then the interior of the ditch is considered its own rishus. It's considered its own domain. Ubeis HaKisei shelamaylo rishus la'atzmai, and up on the surface of the ground is a separate rishus. So the tzaya is not in the rishus where you're going to be standing. Right? We know Hilchas Shabbos. You have a ditch. If the ditch is the right size, The interior of the ditch is one rishus. The exterior of the ditch is a different rishus. The interior of the ditch might be a rishus hayachid, but up on top is a rishus harabim. So it's a different rishus. If the tzaya is in a different rishus, then you don't have to take off the tefillin when you're 4 amos away. And the truth is, says the Mishnah Berurah, ve'ein loy din beis hakisei klal. Up on top on the surface, if the tzaya is down in the ditch, then up on the surface isn't even considered a beis hakisei. K'moshe yispar b'simin pei gimel. U'mutar likanis b'saycha b'tefillin shalav. And you would be allowed to walk in over there while you're wearing the tefillin, because it's not even really a beis hakisei. Never. So what's he saying? We have to chop the flow over here. The Mishnah Berurah is saying, if you're dealing with a beis hakisei kavua, where there is excrement that's exposed on the surface of the ground, then you're not allowed to go in there while you're wearing tefillin. It's a beis hakisei kavua. You're not allowed to go in. You have to take them off. Where do you have to take the tefillin off? 4 amos away. Why? Because there's exposed tzaya. But if it's a beis hakisei kavua, so it's a place where people go for gedolim, it's a beis hakisei kavua, and there is tzaya because it's used for gedolim, but the tzaya is not on the surface. The tzaya is down in the ditch. Then, says the Mishnah Berurah, technically speaking, this place doesn't even have the din of a beis hakisei because there's no tzaya. So you're not mechuyev to take off your tefillin before you go in. You can actually go in while you're wearing tefillin. But you can't use the facilities. You can't even urinate. Why? Because over here we still have Gzeira Shebiyaseh Bem Tzrachav. It's a place where people go to use the facilities for Gedolim. So if we let you go in there and take care of your bodily needs, we have to worry Shebiyaseh Bem Tzrachav. So you have to take your tefillin off before you urinate. But you don't have to take the tefillin off 4 amos away because there's no exposed tzaya. That's what the Mishnah Berurah is going to say now. When we come Malkai, Kaidem sheyashtin, before you urinate, tzarich lacholtzan l'devrei hakoil, you have to take the tefillin off according to everybody. K'may b'shar beis hakisei kavua, like is the din by any other beis hakisei kavua. Why? Because there's still gzeira shebiyaseh behem tzrachav. Kein masik amagid Avram. B'medvar mamurim lahashtin. This is if you're going in to urinate. Avalasik tzrachav. But if you're going into this beis hakisei kavua, where the tzaya is down in a ditch, but you want to go in not to urinate, you want to go in for gedolim, you want to go in to defecate, avalasi strachav mashmi divrei beis Yosef, the yesh lahachmer lachloitz barichuk arba amos mimakom sheroitz alasi strachav afilu nifte b'makom she'ena beis hakisei klal al b'chatzerei ayal pnei asada. Says the beis Yosef again. We're talking about a beis hakisei kavua, meaning it's a beis hakisei, it's an area that people go to use for gedolim. But the excrement that's there is down in a chafira. So let's break this down. If the excrement is up on the surface of the ground, then you can't go in. It's a beis hakisei kavua. You have to take off your tefillin berichuk dalet amos. Why? Because there's exposed tzaya. So you have to take off your tefillin while you're still 4 amos away. If it's a beis hakisei kavua, but there's no exposed tzaya, because the tzaya is down in a chafira, then, technically speaking, it doesn't even have a din of a beis hakisei. So you can even go in over there while you're wearing your tefillin, but you cannot urinate while you're wearing the tefillin. Why? We saw earlier that really you're allowed to urinate while you're wearing your tefillin. Yeah, but over here you're in a beis hakisei kavua. And in a beis hakisei kavua, if we allow you to urinate while you're wearing the tefillin, you might come to defecate while you're wearing the tefillin. So you have to take your tefillin off before you urinate, even though there's no exposed tzaya. But you don't have to take them off 4 hours away. You can take them off even in the beis hakisei, just before you urinate. Now, how about if you're going into this beis hakisei kavua to defecate? Could you come in and then take off the tefillin, just like by urination? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. If you're coming in to defecate, you have to take off the tefillin berichuk dalet amos. Why? Because by the time you finish doing your business, there's going to be excrement over there. So you have to take them off berichuk dalet amos. Okay, now we go to Sif Gimel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines off the bottom of the Shulchan Aruch, end of the line. Says the Mechaber, beis hakisei arai. What's a beis hakisei arai? Hainu kigoyin lahashtin mayim. This is a place where people go to urinate. She'ein adam hoylech b'shvilam lebeis hakisei. People don't go seeking out a beis hakisei for urination. Back in the day, somebody had to urinate. He found an isolated area and he urinated. He didn't even go looking for an outhouse or for a beis hakisei for urination. Adarabba, the Chazal encouraged that somebody, it's mutter, there's no tznius even for urination. Why? Because it's a sakana to hold back the urine. So says the Mechaber over here, beis hakisei arai, hainu kigon lahashtin mayim, shein adam hoylech b'shvilam lebeis hakisei. Va'apam azois das hamakam hazeh beis hakisei tchila. And the place is only now becoming a beis hakisei. Let's see what this means. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting your dollar. Beis hakisei arai. Pirush, hadar minon la'el, the mutter lahashted by betfilin sheberoishai. We said in Sif Aleph that you're allowed to urinate in a beis hakisei arai. You're allowed to urinate in a beis hakisei arai while you're wearing tefillin. Why? Because there's no gzeira shema yasit tzrachav, because people don't go to a beis hakisei arai for gedolim. So we're not worried that you might come to do gedolim over there. So in the beis hakisei arai, we said, you're allowed to urinate while you're wearing tefillin. Says the Mishnah Berurah now, hadar minon le'el the mutter lahashted by betfilin sheberoishai hainu b'makom she'ein by tzaya. That's only if there's no tzaya over there. V'gamu makom she'ein regilin lipanei sham, and it's also a place that people don't commonly use for gedolim. Well, akach legas minon shem yifta ba'tefillin va'afilim b'makom tzedua. You're first making this a beis hakisei now. This terminology of the Mechaber is not precise. What does the Mechaber mean? He says that this is considered a beis hakisei arai because it's only becoming a beis hakisei now. No, it's not even becoming a beis hakisei now. You're only using it for urination. It doesn't get a din of a beis hakisei. Now we go to Sif Daled, 3 lines from the bottom. Imheim b'cheikoi. Let's say you took the tefillin off and you put them b'cheikoi. B'cheikoi literally means in your bosom. What does that mean? Well, you took your tefillin, you opened up your jacket or your cholok, you put the tefillin here. You had your tefillin, you took your tefillin, you put them in over here. So they're inside your garment. And not only is it nice and buttoned up inside your garment over here. Okay, so you see it's inside over here. The chogur chagoira. And you're also wearing a belt. You can't see it, but this rekel over here is tied closed with a belt. How does that help? First of all, the tefillin are all covered up. They're here. Second of all, by virtue of the fact that I'm tied with a belt, they can't slip down and fall out to the floor because they're trapped by the belt. So the Mechaber says, if you have a situation where you have both of these protections, if they're nice and wrapped up over here in your cloak, the chagur chagoira, and you're belted with a belt, or the tefillin are wrapped up in a beged and you're holding them in your hand, mutter bein lahashtin bein lipanis, then you're allowed to urinate or to defecate. You're not wearing the tefillin, and the tefillin are covered and they're well protected. Says the Mishnah Berurah cutting tezayin. Imheim b'cheikoi desu lekalamechash b'shum nitzaitzais. Now, do we have to worry that if we allow you to urinate, you might come to wipe up nitzaitzais, droplets, with the hands that are holding the tefillin? No, you're not holding the tefillin. The tefillin are in here. So your hands are free of tefillin. We don't have to worry about nitzaitzais. The gamishum shem yiplu mimenu. We also don't have to worry that you might drop them, because they're in here and you're tied with a belt. If the tefillin are in such a situation, then you're allowed to urinate or defecate both in a beis kavua and in a beis hakisei kavua and a beis hakisei arai. Oiskad Yudzayin, Oi Bebigdai Biyadai. Or if they're wrapped up in a beged and you're holding them in your hand. Tzarech Ian. Over here, the Mishnah Berurah asks a bomb kasha. What did the Mechaber just say? The Mechaber said, if the tefillin are wrapped up in a beged and you're holding them in your hand, you're allowed to urinate or defecate, and we said both in a Beis HaKisei Kavua and in a Beis HaKisei Arai. Everything is mutter. Frak the Mishnah Berurah, Tzarech Ian. The B'Sif Aleph Kasav, in Sif Aleph we wrote, Afilu Teifes Aisam Bebig Dayaser. Even if you're holding the tefillin in your hand in a beged, it's aser. We'll just find it here. Yeah, here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines down in the Mechaber, in the Shulchan Aruch, near the beginning of the line. The Mechaber said in Sif Aleph, Avalam oichsan biyadai, if you're holding the tefillin in your hand, also lahashtad behem mu'umid, you're not allowed to urinate while you're standing, afilu im taifes eisam bebigdai, even if you're holding them in your hand, wrapped up in a beged, mipnei shetzak l'shashish biyadai nitzaitzis shemaraglov, because we're worried about nitzaitzis. So how does he say over here now that if it's wrapped up in your hand in a beged, you could be mashtin, you could urinate? Why aren't we afraid of nitzaitzis? You want to tell me that you could urinate when it's pechekoi? I understand, there's no problem with nitzaitzis, you're not holding them in your hand, they're in here. But the Mechaber also said that if they're wrapped up in a beged and you're holding it in your hand, you could urinate. Why isn't that a steer to Sif Aleph? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Vayin b'tazu Magen Avram shenitchaku bazem oid. The Taz and the Magen Avram struggle mightily to answer this. Ubebir agro kasav the sif zehu shemibala truma. This sif that comes from the Trumas Hadeshen, the halach of this sif over here, sif dalid, is based on the Trumas Hadeshen. Hu shita acheres hachelik al hod sif aleph. The Trumas Hadeshen argues on what the Mechaber said in sif aleph. With sphere laid the bebig daviyadai sulei chashina l'shiv shani tzaitzais. And he holds that if the tefillin are wrapped up in a beged in your hand, we're not afraid that you're going to come to wipe up nitzaitzis. And if they're tied up in their beged, it's certainly mutter. Okay. Sifhei, bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch. So now, Soif Davar Akol Nishma. You want to go into a Beis HaKisei Kavua in order to defecate. What do? You should take the tefillin off on your 4 amas away from the Beis HaKisei. Haga, says the Ramah, V'yesh Oimrim, Afilu Beloy Tzrachav. There are those that say that this is true if you want to go into the Beis HaKisei, even if you're not going into the Beis HaKisei to defecate. Still, you should take off the tefillin before you go in, and you should take them all 4 amas away. V'toiv lahachmir. And continues the Mechaber, V'goylalan b'ritzuay shalahen, you should wrap them up in their ritzuas, V'oichazan b'yaminai, and you should hold them in the right hand, Ubebigdai, and in its beged, keneged libay, right opposite your heart. V'yazar shalaite ritzua yaitze b'tachas yadai tefach, and you should make sure that you don't have a tefach of the ritzua sticking out. And then when you leave the Beis HaKisei, marchik arba amos, go 4 amas away, or manichan, and then you can put the tefillin back on. Says the Mishnah Berurah, excuse me, Ois Katan Yud Ches. So, the Mechaber said if somebody wants to go into a Beis HaKisei Kavua, either to urinate or to defecate, he said you should take off the tefillin when you're 4 amas away, wrap them up, etc., etc. Says the Mishnah Berurah back on Ayin Beis Amud Beis Ais Katan Yud Ches. LeBeis HaKisei Kavua. Nokat Kavua, the reason the Mechaber specifically addresses the Beis HaKisei Kavua, Mishum Seifa. is because of the halacha that he says at the end of the sif. Lashmi'inan, to teach me, ta'afilu b'kavua, that even by a basic kise kavua, machnes ha-tefillin imoi, mishum shmira, he's allowed to bring the tefillin into the basic kise with him in order to protect them. What's he supposed to do? Put them down outside? Right? He can take them into the basic kise to protect them. Avalinachinami, ta'afilu b'eina kavua klal, tzarech lachloitz barichlik ama amois, mimakam sherotza lipanes. But, really, even if it's not a basic kisa kavua, even if you're just going to urinate or to defecate out in the trees somewhere, it's bechlal not a basic kisa kavua, still you should take the tefillin off when you're 4 hours away, ukidala'el b'sayv cutting yud gimel. V'chein ma denaka lasis strachav ganke mishum revusa d'seifa ava be'emes, hu adin lahashtin. It doesn't matter if you're going in to defecate or to urinate, tzarech lachloitz barichlik arba amais ukidala'el b'sef alef. Ice cutting yud tes, and the Mechaber said v'toiv lahachmir. HaMagen Avram Masik. The Magen Avram concludes the Medina also likanes lebeis hakise b'tefillin, that al pidin you're not allowed to go into a beis hakise at all with tefillin. The loigara mimerchatz l'kamon simin memhesiv beis. You're not even allowed to go into a beis hamerchatz. How could you go into a beis hakise? Vayin b'prima gadav v'mamar Mordechai shekasu d'medivrei harosh lo mashba'achi gam medivrei Rav Hai lo mashba'achi ayin sham v'sefer eshkal b'shem hagoyin mashba k'tirutzai d'Magen Avram ayin sham. Ois kat neches, the Mechaber said that you should hold the tefillin after you take them off biyaminoi, with your right hand. Why the right hand? Says Mishnah Berurah, loy b'smailoi, but don't hold the tefillin in your left hand. Why? Because you need to use the left hand in order to clean yourself. Remember, we learned this halakha earlier, much earlier in over here in Chelek Aleph. We learned that when somebody uses the Beis HaKisei for Gedolim, he should clean himself using the left hand. So therefore, you hold the tefillin in the right hand, so you shouldn't come to clean yourself while you're holding your tefillin. And we don't have to worry. Okay, it's very nice. You're telling me hold the tefillin in the right hand because you're going to use the left hand to clean yourself. Now, the fact that you use the left hand to clean yourself, that's halacha psuka. We learned that earlier in Chelek Aleph. But how come we're not worried that even if you're holding the tefillin in your right hand, you might come to use the right hand to wipe up the tzaitzais of meraglayim? Says the Mishnah Berurah that we don't have to worry about. Because since we're talking about a basic kisei kavua, mistama oises rachav miyushav. Generally speaking, in a basic kisei kavua, you were sitting down, so there are no tzaitzais. Kasav Rama Siman Nun Tes. The mutal likanis betfilin lemuvuais hamutunafais. You're allowed to go into filthy streets, filthy, smelly streets. You're allowed to go into them while you're wearing tefillin. Afilu yesham makam metunaf lahedya. Even if there's a filthy place, maybe it has tzaya, you know that there's tzaya there, you're allowed to go through there. But it would be better to cover up the tefillin with your hat. And if you want to take the tefillin off before you go into this filthy place and then put them on afterwards, if somebody knows that he's going to be walking through these filthy streets, if you know that there are such streets that you're going to have to walk through between your house and the shul, so don't put on the tefillin before you go to shul. This way, walk through the filthy streets without tefillin, and you'll put on the tefillin when you get to shul. Or put them on while you're in your house. But cover the tefillin up when you go into these filthy streets. Maybe it's not enough to cover the bottom. Maybe you have to cover the ritzuos as well. Certainly, the 3 windings around the finger that are done with the ritzuos or the shalyad which make up a letter of the shame. It's the shin of Shakai. Uvechuvas Radbaz Chelik Dalet Siman Lamed Vav Mashma Gamkein Shesarvi Debidin Tzarich Lechasis Etfilim B'Mekamis Amatunafis. V'chol she'i efshal lechasoisam. If you don't have a way of covering up the tefillin, mutav she'yinichem bebeis hakneses. It would be better that you should put the tefillin on in shul. How about the dalid of the kesher of the shalroish and the yud of the kesher of the shalyad? Ain't sarch lechasais. You don't have to cover them. Shehem derech keshira, because they are formed by tying a knot. Loy derech ksiva. It's not called that you have a dalid written on the back of your head on the ritzuas, and you have a yud written on your shalyad. That's not a form of writing. It's something constructed out of leather. It doesn't have as much of a chumrah to it. Ayin Sham. Okay, I thought we would go further, but we're going to stop over here with Sivav. Thank you so much for joining me for Libet HaTorah, discussing Libet HaTorah, Shemimeng, and Gans Klal Yisrael. Rabban Shem said, Yeshua said first, Panas and Shidduchim Tol is a need. We should be zaked to see the B'yas Kal Tzedek, Meher V'Yameinu. Be well, a Gemar, Sima Toiva, good Gebench Yor. Be well.